What's going on, guys? Twigging Timber Outdoors here with my version of the craft store Never Sink. Now, the Never Sink is, technically it's a Mayfly imitation, where you typically will use either CDC or some kind of other feather to imitate the wing, but we're going to show you guys a craft store version of the Never Sink. So, in order to do that, we're going to need either a nice bodkin, or in my case, I'm going to be using a tube setup. It's a little stronger. You're going to need some craft foam in the color you want. You need a little bit of dubbing, and what we're going to use to make our wings is actually the material that you would put inside of a stuffed animal. So you can find that at Walmart or any of your other craft stores. And what we're going to start off with is, you can use any dry fly hook you like, but I like to tie these a little bigger because I kind of use them almost like stimulators. So we're going to use in Umpqua actually a nymph hook to tie this fly, and I'm going to also use fairly heavy thread, and we're going to use I like to use Danville's 140 in brown. But before we start with our hook, we're going to take our hook off. This is a barbless nymph hook. We're going to start by either putting in your vise your bodkin like this. You're going to open your jaws or put it in there. Or, in my case, I'm going to use this tube. What do you call it? A tube kind of modifier here. And I'll slide the vise a little off to the side to show you what I'm doing. Okay. Just gonna get that in focus for you. I think there we go. Alright, I did lie. We're gonna have one more material. And that's gonna be some pheasant tail. Now we're gonna take 3 or 4, because fish don't count. If fish could count, we would never catch fish. 3 or 4 pheasant tail fibers from one side, and I like to make sure that they separate pretty well. I like to separate them a little bit. Okay, and we're going to set those off to the side. We're going to start by creating a tiny little base of thread, and you don't want to go too tight. You want a nice little loose set of wraps, and I'm going to snip off our excess. We're going to just put a tiny bit more thread on there. And this is just going to act as a base for right now to tie in our fibers. Now our fibers, I want to put in maybe an inch off the back. Maybe a little less than an inch. Make sure that you need some loose wraps, but you don't want to do too loose of wraps. Okay, we're going to put these right on top. There we go, and we can modify these later. And we're going to snip off our excess. I've actually folded them back before and rehashed them, but for today we're not going to do that. Next, I'm going to take our piece of EVA foam, or whatever foam you want. This is just craft store foam in like a 1 mil. And I like to cut it in about a 2 to 3 inch section, and about, I don't know, maybe like 3/4 inch, or what looks like to be 2 centimeters. And I'm going to cut a little angle in one end, like so. Then, I'm going to even that out a little bit. I do not have obsessive compulsive disorder, but I want to make sure it's even. And then I want to put the tip of the foam right at the tip of where we started our wraps. And we're going to bring our thread there first. And we're going to start by wrapping right over the tip end, maybe about 1 millimeter or so before. And you don't want to wrap too tightly. Okay, then we're going to work our thread back about, I don't know, double the length from the end of the foam to that. We're going to double that and go about because we want to make our segmentations gradually get larger. And you're going to just draw it down a little bit. You don't want to go too tightly. You're going to put 2 or 3 wraps in there, then work ourselves back again. And the same concept, I'm going to gradually make this abdomen a little bigger every time. We're going to go for about, I don't know. One second, sorry. Trying to concentrate here. Let's see. We're going to go for about an inch, maybe a little farther. I like to imitate, once you tie a good one, you want to make sure you imitate that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my scissors. I'm going to leave about, I don't know, half an inch tag end. And then I'm going to throw either a whip finish or a couple half hitches in here. If you're going to, regardless of what you do, do it lightly. Don't draw down too heavily. Maybe 1 half hitch. Okay? I'm going to leave my thread intact, just for personal preference. And I just slide this off of our bodkin, or in this case, the tube adapter. Then I'm going to take my adapter or bodkin out, whatever you used. I'm going to grab my hook. My hook, in this case, is a size 10 nymph hook. And the reason I can use a larger, heavier nymph hook is because when we use foam in our dubbing, this thing, they call it a never sink for a reason. Let's see here. See if I can get you in focus. There we go. Now, we're going to take what we created, and we're going to throw a couple wraps here. Nothing crazy. I like to basically take what I've done and put it on the far side of me. And I like to bring it and throw 1 or 2 stability wraps in onto the hook itself. And then I can kind of figure out where I want my hook to go. That's about where I want it right there. Then I'm going to take my thread back up to where my last, sorry, it's hard to do without touching where my last wrap was. And I'm going to draw it down a little bit. Draw it down a little bit. Then I want to leave myself enough room behind the eye. I'm going to draw down a little foam. Okay. Snip your excess foam in the front, because you definitely don't want a bunch of extra foam up front. A little bit's okay, because then you have a little extra material to bind down, but you definitely don't want too much. Okay, so we want to make sure that our fly rides up. So I like to kind of get a little hold of the foam here, and I'm going to start wrapping down, but you want to make sure that it doesn't spin on you. So you could have put super glue down, but I don't see there being as much benefit as needed to bust out the super glue. I want to make sure that it rides still straight. And then I'm going to work my thread back to where my original wraps were. And then one secret for me to make sure it doesn't move is I like to take my thread behind, wrap, behind. Sorry if this is difficult to see. There we go. And wrap. And just for good measure, I know it's hard for you to see with my fingers here, but it definitely does want to move on you, but it won't once we anchor everything down. Okay, now on to the wings. Now, taking some of that material from where you would put it inside of a bear or whatever, or stuffed animal, I like to grab it, separate, and clump it back together like you would dubbing, and then I like to pinch in the middle and kind of twist a little bit. That gives me some firm place to tie down. What I'll do is take my thread up, I will put it over it, I'll collect it like this, pinch it together, and then seat it on the fly where I want. Okay? Then I'll pull back on it a little bit. You can get control of where you want it by doing this. And then I wrap maybe even over it a little bit. It's a really slick material, but it floats like mad. I want to make sure that this back one really seats and sits well, and that it sits right on top. Boom. Because now what I can do is I can fan it out a little bit. And what we'll do now is we'll grab a little bit of dubbing of the color of your choice. I like a little lighter dubbing. We're going to throw a little noodle on here. Wet my fingers. Wrap a little dubbing noodle. You can get it kind of, doesn't have to be crazy tight, but all right. And about 2-3 millimeters forward, or maybe an 1/8 inch forward. Reason I put that dubbing noodle in is to cover up some of the wraps, but at the same time, it'll prop up the next part of the wing. And so I grab a little more of this. Again, doing the same process. I'll pinch it, pull it, twist it in the middle, and perform the same thing. Put it right in the middle, pinch it over itself, draw it down. And really anchor it down. And before I progress forward on this wrap, or on this part of the fly, I'll take a little more of the stuff, because the stuff is super cheap. Not much, just take a small bit. Perform the same process, and I will typically tie it in a bit angled. For some width of the wing. Granted, I can always do this, but just personal preference. All right. I want to look at the bottom, what the profile looks like. The top looks decent. Get some more in your, dubbing to create another noodle. Probably took too much there. Take some of that out. Wrap ourselves forward. And last time, you don't need much this time. We're going to do the same process. I like to think of this fly as the unsinkable stimulator. Just looks a little different. So I like to do the same thing. I'm gonna pop it right on top and over. Boom. All right. Now, from here on out, we're gonna do dubbing all the way forward to the head. I always suggest doing it in small clumps, but sometimes it's better to do as I say, not as I do. Hot mess right now, doesn't it? All we do now is throw a little whip finish in. Take all this material and we're going to pull it up and back. Now I'm going to snip straight down like this, being careful not to get our tail. Then, and we could have probably taken this forward too, but this sits high. We're going to take a dubbing brush and just work the sides a bit. Because most guys, when they go to the craft store, probably can't find good hackle, right? So what do we do when we can't find good hackle? Well, make it dubby and muddy. Now what I'm going to do is take my scissors, take care of any unruly hairs, making sure to snip the bottom fairly square so that it rides evenly. And that is essentially the finished fly. That right there will catch lots of fish, and you found everything at the craft store. Pretty cool, huh? So hopefully you guys liked the video. If you did, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, check out the other videos in the playlists, and until next time guys, catch you guys on the flip side. Tight lines, and we're out.